We think of our calendars as being rock solid, right? A fixed, reliable grid we've laid over the world. But the entire history of timekeeping tells a completely different story. Every calendar is built on cosmic imprecision. It's an instrument that, by its very nature, is designed to fail, to slowly drift away from the sky it's supposed to mirror. And this isn't some simple story of progress. It's really an ongoing investigation into what happens when our human systems come up against the fundamental cycles of the Earth and find that they just don't sync up.
And this drift, this constant breaking, isn't because ancient people were ignorant or made a mistake. It's actually a structural property of timekeeping itself. It's the unavoidable outcome of trying to measure something that's not quite measurable, of trying to force the messy, fluid cycles of the cosmos into our neat, tidy little boxes.
Okay, so the problem starts with some really inconvenient math. The time it takes for the Earth to go around the Sun, our solar year, doesn't divide cleanly into the time it takes the Moon to go through its phases, and neither of those divides cleanly into the time it takes the Earth to spin on its axis, the day. These three basic units of time just don't play nice together, so any calendar that tries to track one of them perfectly is guaranteed to drift away from the others.
This unavoidable misalignment, well, it has a name: astronomical drift. And really, it's the main character in our whole investigation. It's this quiet, relentless force that pushes our systems of order right to their limits, forcing us, again and again, to confront the fact that we can't perfectly control the natural world.
So to really understand how this drift works, we need to look at its primary engine. There are a few different factors, but the biggest one by far is this huge, almost imperceptible wobble in the Earth's own rotation.
And that wobble takes a very, very long time to complete one full cycle. We're talking roughly 26,000 years. That's the timescale we're operating on here. It's a motion so slow it's completely invisible in a single human lifetime, but over the course of a civilization, it changes everything.
This wobble causes something known as the precession of the equinoxes. The best way to think about it is that the Earth spins like a top, and as it spins, it's also wobbling very slowly because of the gravitational tug of the Sun and Moon. This means the point in our orbit where spring officially begins, the vernal equinox, creeps just a tiny bit westward each year against the background of the stars. In other words, our seasons are arriving a little bit earlier each year relative to the constellations.
And this quote, it really captures a profound shift in thinking. To us, precession is just a mechanical glitch. But for many ancient observers, this wasn't a flaw in the Earth. It was the entire cosmos slowly turning. They saw precession as this grand, majestic clock, marking the passage of huge world ages as the seasons slowly process through the signs of the zodiac.
So this brings us back to that really crucial question. How do you manage time when nature itself refuses to fit neatly into your systems? Well, if we look at the historical record, we can see three very distinct strategies emerge. You can accept it, you can try to correct it, or you can try to transcend it.
First, let's look at the ancient Egyptians. They used a 365-day calendar, and they were fully aware that it was drifting by about a quarter of a day every year. But here's the amazing part. Instead of fixing it, they just embraced it. They let their festivals literally wander through the seasons of the year over centuries. They didn't see it as an error. They reinterpreted it as a grand 1,460-year cycle, the Sothic cycle, where at the end, everything would finally circle back to its starting point. For them, ritual continuity was way more important than seasonal precision.
Now let's look at the complete opposite strategy: correction. The Julian calendar, which was introduced by Julius Caesar, was a massive leap in accuracy. But it was still off. It had this tiny error of just over 11 minutes a year compared to the true solar year.
Doesn't sound like much, right? But over 16 centuries, that tiny error just kept adding up. By the 1500s, the calendar was off by 10 full days. The spring equinox was happening around March 11th instead of March 21st. And this wasn't just a problem for farmers. For the Christian church, it was a huge theological crisis because the date of Easter is tied directly to that equinox.
The response to this crisis was the Gregorian Reform. This was a massive technical, political effort to basically seize control of the calendar. Pope Gregory XIII literally deleted 10 days from history and created a much more complex leap year rule. The goal was to stop the drift, realign time with the seasons, and fix it in place once and for all.
But there was a third strategy: just transcend the problem entirely. Civilizations like the Maya in Mesoamerica and the Vedic culture in India created calendars on a scale that is just mind-boggling. By framing time in cycles that lasted millions, even billions of years, that 26,000-year precessional wobble becomes a tiny, almost insignificant detail. It's like finding a single misplaced stitch in a tapestry the size of a continent.
And this comparison is so incredibly telling. It shows how a civilization's response to this one single technical problem reveals everything about its core priorities. Do you value ritual continuity above all? Do you need to have precise control over nature? Or do you see human time as just one small part of a much grander cosmic cycle?
Now, you might think this is all just ancient history. But this exact same problem is still with us, it just has a new face. We've swapped out the sun and stars for the unbelievably precise vibrations of cesium atoms in our atomic clocks. But that negotiation with a messy, imperfect natural world, it hasn't ended. Not by a long shot.
Our modern conflict is between two different kinds of time. On one side, you've got atomic time, UTC, which is perfectly stable, perfectly constant. It's the time our machines need. On the other side, you have the actual physical rotation of the Earth, which is, well, variable. It's gradually and irregularly slowing down, mostly because of the gravitational drag from the moon.
So how do we manage this modern drift? We periodically insert something called a leap second. It's our version of a calendar reform, a tiny patch to keep our two different clocks in sync. But that 1 second adjustment can cause absolute chaos for the global digital systems that run our world, from financial markets to GPS.
And this forces us to ask the exact same question our ancestors faced. Should our timekeeping serve the needs of our complex technology, which demands perfect regularity? Or should it stay tied to the physical, natural, and messy rhythms of our own planet?
When you look at the long, winding history of calendars, one thing becomes incredibly clear. Our systems of time aren't discoveries of some fixed external truth. They are, and they have always been, ongoing negotiations.
Every single fix, from the Sophic cycle to the Gregorian reform to our modern leap second, is really just another temporary agreement. It's the latest truce in our unending attempt to impose a clean, human sense of order on natural cycles that just stubbornly refuse to be perfectly controlled.
This whole pattern of a civilization confronting the limits of its own control when faced with the realities of the Earth's cycles is a recurring theme that we explore here. So for those of you who want to continue this long-term inquiry, follow the channel.
Which leaves us with a final thought to consider. Maybe the goal of a perfect, permanent calendar was always an illusion. Maybe all of our systems of time, from ancient to modern, are just a series of temporary agreements that we make with the sky that is always, inevitably, on the move.